bunch of people in here, don't you?
It's 1 for sick. Yes. Go back to work.
Gotcha. Where are you working at?
Where?
Where?
San Luis, Missouri.
Missouri?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm from Maryland.
Okay. Whose car is it?
It's to my boss.
Your boss?
My boss, yeah.
Where's he live? Where's your boss live?
My boss right now is staying in Maryland, but he lives in Texas.
Okay.
Houston, Texas.
Does anybody else have a driver's license?
Driver license?
Yeah.
No,
Nobody?
Only me, so he's there.
He's hauling these people for money is what he's doing, but sometimes they commingle dope.
No. But
He,
did you see that squad at the back?
there's 8 people in there.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know that. They put an extra row of seats in there.
Yeah. So he's getting paid to all these people, probably to Maryland, I would say, if I had my guess.
Here to help break this down is president of the Conservative Caucus, Jim Pfaff. Jim, what do you make of these developments in our poor Maryland man story?
He's a human trafficker. I mean, listen, it's so funny that Democrats, one of the things that is their great skill is being able to tell stories. The problem is they always lie about the stories, as they did in this case. So what you just observed, what everyone watching this just observed there, is a human trafficker. This is an example of the people who were getting paid to bring people up from the border, and Abrego Garcia is part of that whole process. Now, when you add into what he was doing to his wife, the fact that, Donald Trump was being lampooned for saying that Abrego Garcia had MS-13 on his hand in that recent ABC interview, but he absolutely did have that.
You can't judge a man by his tattoos, Jim. Come on.
That's what they tell me.
I mean, it says MS-13, but don't just because it says MS-13 doesn't mean he is MS-13.
Well, and it's so funny because Democrats in every area of society, whether it's trans or all these wokeness and all this other stuff, we are told to ignore objective fact. That's what they want us to do. So this guy clearly is connected to violence in some fashion. I can't say precisely how, but it's pretty bad when he will beat up on his wife. And when he will traffic human beings like this is a very real problem. So Donald Trump was absolutely right to send this guy out of the United States. And Democrats have dug themselves a hole by supporting it as the evidence comes out.
Well, what about the lawmakers who pledged that they wouldn't leave until he came home with them?
They're welcome to stay. Like, the outrage of what these people want to do to our society. I mean, and by the way, the whole legal context and the legal pretext that these judges have laid out to say why Donald Trump cannot take them out of the country has to be balanced against the fact that Joe Biden, using that CBP app, let them in, because all this is about, the quick removal is related to where you apprehend these people. Well, we've got people on the CBP app who came here illegally, and we know that they were at least touched and processed in some way right at the border, and they should be immediately removed. That is a quick removal. So there are a lot of people, not just the violent illegals, but even the nonviolent ones who went into that app. They should be able to go immediately.
It seems like we're entering a chapter in U.S. history where some pretty core principles about the Constitution and what it means to exercise due process, who it applies to, are going to be questioned and stretched and revisited. Because so much of case law is not just permanent. Like, you can go back, courts can go back and they can say, you know what, we made a bad decision here. Dred Scott, that was a bad chapter in our decision-making history. We're going to overturn it. There is precedent for courts revisiting old case law. But do you see a scenario where we are actually going to revisit some of the kind of the constitutional understandings of what due process is and who it applies to?
Well, we shouldn't have to, because keep in mind, on the other side of due process, we had government authorities pre-censoring American citizens through intimidation with online platforms. Let's talk about due process there. Where's my due process right when
Yeah.
I was shut down when in Twitter 1.0 and couldn't have my voice made more broad. And I do have a decent sized voice, not the biggest in the world, but a decent sized one. But I was shut down for years on Twitter, and that I didn't get my due process there. They just said, "Hey, we don't like what you're talking about. Shut up." See, due process, the due process argument is highly valid when it comes to American citizens. There is law on the books which explicitly limits due process for people who come here illegally across our borders in any shape, form, or fashion. So this should be a simple issue because expedited release applies to the vast majority of those who came into the United States under the Biden administration through the CBP app, through just releasing them, by the way, through lack of enforcement on the border. The Biden administration knew exactly what they were doing. They want to make this a difficult process to clean up because they are looking to replace these people with American citizens where they can, and hopefully in the future as voters.
Yeah. Such a great point. I want to hop over to another one that you've been highlighting. You recently posted on X. You called for urgent Medicaid cuts, citing a 50% increase in recent years, driven largely by fraud and state-level schemes to enroll illegal immigrants. You flagged state-level Medicaid fraud and efforts to add illegal immigrants to the rolls. Walk us through this issue. This seems like a problem that may be way bigger than just 4 years of a good administration. This looks like a whole of country kind of problem.
Yeah, but there's one acute instance of this, and it's California. We just found out recently, to the tune of billions of dollars, California has been, at the state level, like the state actors, the bureaucrats and people, and Gavin Newsom ultimately in California, have been rigging the Medicaid system to get money directly to illegals. We know that as a fact right now. Again, it's to the tune of billions of dollars. And this is the kind of fraud that I think we need to be addressing in this. And listen, I think the Medicaid program ultimately should go away at the federal level. States can handle this all by themselves, and we would be taxed less, and we could choose which states we want to go to if we want to do this sort of thing as a safety net. States actually do have authority to do these things as a safety net. The federal government does not. So we need to highly reform the system now. Eventually, we need to have the states deal with these issues.
Spoken like a true decentralized constitutionalist. I love it. To that point, though, besides just bringing it back to the states, what reforms can the states implement to help mitigate some of this fraud?
Well, I think if we're going to keep this program at the federal level, we really do need to block grant it. We've talked about this for decades now. The federal government puts in certain requirements, and it's not typically handled well because of the restraints that are placed upon states who may be able to come up with creative ways to do this. That's one major thing that we could do if we're going to keep this system in place. But again, we've had a 50% increase in Medicaid spending over recent years. It's a massive amount of extra spending. The vast majority of that can only be accounted for because of illegal immigration. There are some aspects of it that account for economic situations or changes in programs along the way, but the vast majority of that 50% increase is related to illegal aliens, and the California thing is an example. So we need to reform that immediately. Yeah. We need stricter provisions that will not allow illegals to get it.
Well, California, to your point, is the blueprint to expose all of this. Hopefully we get some political energy to do that. Jim Pfaff, a pleasure as always. Thank you.